Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. This is a webinar where we talk about Lyme disease, and each webinar is a bit different, and they're created by your questions. So the best way you can participate, actually a couple ways you can participate. One is just listen in, because when I answer questions, there's a lot of teaching that I try to do as part of that too. But the other thing you do is actually write a question to me. And so the way to do it is over here on the right-hand side of your screen down at the bottom is a chat box. And you can go ahead and write your question to me there. The only thing I ask is that when you send the question to me, send it by clicking the enter key only one time. If you happen to click the enter key multiple times to kind of break your question into multiple paragraphs, it sends it to me as multiple separate questions, which gets to be hard to follow from my side of the computer. Okay, so that's my only request, is that you click the enter key only one time when you're writing that question and sending it to me. Okay, all right. I see that there's a number of new names here tonight. To those of you that are here for the first time, welcome. I hope that you get something out of it. And I know I've got a lot of people that are returning again too, which means that y'all keep getting some value out of what we're doing here. So I'm glad to see that there's information that you find helpful here too. This is the first of 4 back-to-back webinars that we're doing here this month. And by back-to-back, I mean I do these on Thursdays, and we are going to do 4 in a row. So we have one tonight, and then the next 3 Thursdays as well, too. So I hope you'll sign up for those. For those of you that are listening in, and those of you that aren't actually, I create a recording of this. And so there's many people that watch these webinars after they're done and don't participate in live version. In terms of the recording, if you happen to miss something tonight, that recording is going to be available tomorrow morning. And I try to get it out somewhere by 9 to 9:30 a.m. Seattle time. And I plan on doing that as well tomorrow. So keep a lookout in your email. If you happen to miss that email, though, or for some reason didn't get to you, there's multiple places you can find my recording. Okay, so I'm going to show them to you here real quick. Let me just do a quick screen share. Let's see here. Oops, I guess I messed that up. Let's do that again. Hold on. I'm a little rusty at this here. There we go. Okay, so one place that you could find the recording is here at my Lyme disease information site, Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD. If you scroll all the way down here on the home page, you can click on this recording button there, okay? To see a bigger version of it, you can click on the webinars page here. Go down here, and there's the recording section, okay? Another place to find it is at my supplement store. I always put it on the home page. And then finally, another place you can find it is at my Lyme disease practice site, Marty Ross MD Healing Arts, and you can find it down here in this section here too, okay? In addition to these places, you can find it on my Facebook page. And my Facebook page is at facebook.com/treatlyme. You can also find it on my YouTube channel as well, too. All right, so there's multiple places to do it. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started here tonight. I'm going to take the first question. All right. First question is from Justin. Justin says, I've been treating Lyme co-infections for 10 years and have plateaued after the 2nd year of treatment. Tried almost all of the standard antibiotic protocols and some herbals with not much gain. I recently had a 24 heavy metal challenge test that showed elevated metals, elevated off the charts. Does metal chelation play a big factor in healing in this scenario, or do you think it is best to treat the infections first? So, good question. So let me I'm going to answer it, but I want to go a roundabout way to get there, okay? So, when I look at Lyme disease and this mess that people have when they get a tick bite and get infected with Lyme and the co-infections, I like to think of it as a total load phenomenon illness. And what I mean by that is that when you have Lyme disease, there's actually many things collectively that add together to create the mess that we call Lyme disease. One of those is the infections, okay? Some of the times it can be injury that happens to your energy factories in your cells called mitochondria. Sometimes it could be detoxification problems. Sometimes it could be that your mast cells, that are cells that react to things you're allergic to, become overreactive. Sometimes it could be you got too many yeast living in your intestines. Sometimes it could be that your adrenal glands aren't working right. Sometimes it could be the thyroid isn't working right. But there's a lot of things that add up together to create this mess, okay? Now, we don't have to fix every one of them to get you well, though. We just got to fix the right ones. And sometimes it means in the right order, okay? So what do I mean by that? Well, I like to call it the rain barrel analogy, which is if you put enough drops of water in a rain barrel, it will overflow. But you don't need to remove all of the water from the rain barrel to keep it from overflowing, okay? So you can kind of think of the rain barrel overflowing as bad health, and when you get the water low enough that it's not overflowing, that means you're back being healthy again, okay? So when it comes to the things that I think are the most important to address, you can find those as the initial steps that I recommend in what I call the Ross Lyme Support Protocol. And I'll show that to you here in a minute. But I think it's important to correct sleep. I think it's important to be on a healthy diet. I think it's important to correct your hormonal problems. It's important to lower cytokines. It's important to treat yeast infections if you have it. It's important to treat Lyme and the co-infections right away. Those are kind of the upfront things that I think most people should do. If, however, by around 6 to 9 months into a treatment, somebody is not getting better, then it's time to start expanding out to look at other things that are filling up your rain barrel, causing it to overflow, okay? And one of those is heavy metal toxicity, all right? From what you've described here, that's pretty significant elevations of heavy metals. And the problem with heavy metal toxicity is if you have it, it winds up interfering with the correct functioning of your cell energy factories called mitochondria. If those mitochondria are not working correctly, that means your immune system doesn't have enough energy to help you heal. That means your adrenal glands don't have enough energy to correctly function to give you energy, okay? So it becomes a big problem, basically, all right? So yes, at this point, I think it would be a good time to probably start doing your chelation. If you have already treated if you've treated for more than 2 years with your antibiotics and really aren't getting well, it could be the heavy metal elevations that is one of those things that's keeping you from getting well, okay? And it might be that you stop antibiotics for a month or two while you try to start doing the chelation and eventually add them back in. So that would be something to think about doing, okay? All right, so let me just do a quick screen share here, everyone. I'm going to show you my protocol and show you the various steps that help get a person well, and which I think are the most important ones to do at the beginning of a treatment. All right, so this is Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD. Take a look at the treatment protocol tab here, all right? And so the most important things I think to address in a treatment are, number one, get sleep. I think everyone should be doing things to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. All right, number two, I prefer that people do a paleo type diet, and I described that here, or something called an elimination diet. Number three, lower your cytokines. Cytokines are inflammation chemicals that are made when you have Lyme disease that give you most of your Lyme symptoms, but also can suppress the immune system, okay? Number four, be in something that helps your body deal with the stress of this illness. We call those adaptogens. Number five, correct your hormonal problems if they're there. 6, be on a good multivitamin. 7, do some basic detox steps. 8, exercise if you can and it doesn't make you worse. 9, I have a section here about immune system boosters, but basically everything else I'm telling you to do above boost your immune system. Number 10, get yeast out if it's there. Number 11, treat your Lyme germs. Number 12, treat your co-infections. All right, and then if you are not getting better, you start doing this special considerations section. And in here, I talk about 6 months and beyond things to consider. One of those is mold toxicity. One of those is a detox problem called MTHFR. Another one is heavy metals. And that's what I was trying to say. I usually wait till about 6 to 9 months to start looking at fixing heavy metal problems. Okay? All right. All right, let me go back here. All right. So, Justin, I hope that gives you some useful information there. Okay. All right. Let me go back here. Let's see. All right. Hello, SJ. Let's see. Happy New Year, kind doctor. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. The tips of many of my toes. Let's see. An odd symptom appeared recently. The tips of many of my toes got pretty calloused and also sensitive to touch right around the nail lines. Not painful to walk, but touching it with hands is uncomfortable. Have you seen this in Lyme co-infections? Also, a woman in your last December webinar asked you about her daughter's eye issues. If it is of any use to her, I recently read in Buhner's newest Lyme book that he recommends the herb Stefania for eye issues. He has a whole entry on it if she wants to read it. So SJ, thank you for that suggestion about Buhner. I'm not familiar with that one. I'll have to look at it and see. In terms of, have I heard this as a problem for people with Lyme? They suddenly develop it. No. However, it sounds like a neurologic sensitivity kind of issue. And yes, Lyme can infect the nerves, giving that, and also Bartonella can too. So I wonder if it's a Lyme and or Bartonella effect issue. Okay, all right. That would be what I have to say to that. Thanks for the question, SJ. Hello, Bill. Let's see. Hello, Dr. Ross. Which lab and what test are you recommending to try to confirm if Bartonella is involved in the cytokine signs? So what Bill's talking about is I describe Lyme disease as a cytokine excess syndrome. So let's talk about what cytokines are first, and then I'll talk about the Bartonella question. So whenever your immune system sees a germ in you or a toxin in you, like mold toxins, for instance, or yeast in you, or chronic viruses in you, it's going to work to get rid of them. And white blood cells make a group of chemicals called cytokines. And cytokines are good and bad. On the good side, they cause more white blood cells to be made. They draw those white blood cells to where the infection is, and they help those white blood cells work better to get rid of whatever the germ is. Okay, so that's all good, all right? But in Lyme and in mold toxin illness sometimes, and in yeast overgrowth in the intestine sometimes, and in small intestine bacterial overgrowth of the intestine sometimes, all these conditions are things that can trigger the immune system to make cytokines, and sometimes the immune system doesn't do a good job. And if it's having a hard time getting rid of those germs or those toxins, it's going to start producing more cytokines, all right? And eventually you can get into a syndrome where you have too many cytokines, and too many cytokines make it so you can't think. They make you hurt all over. They give you fatigue. They interfere with how your hormonal systems work, etc. So I could go down the list of what we call Lyme disease symptoms or mold toxin symptoms or yeast overgrowth symptoms. And a lot of those, the majority of those are cytokine excess symptoms, okay? And Bartonella is another one of those germs that can trigger the immune system to make too many cytokines, all right? So if you're trying to confirm if you have Bartonella, which is an infection that also is transmitted by tick bite, it gets to be a little tricky. So one of the problems with Bartonella is that we estimate that we know there are about 28 to 30 strains, of which 15 are thought to infect humans. The majority of these were previously thought to just be animal strains, but we know that they can infect humans as well too, okay? Now, the issue is the standard antibody testing that we do is effective at testing for maybe about 2 strains. One is Bartonella cantana, one is Bartonella henselae, okay? And I think IGeneX now is doing Vinsoni as part of theirs as well too. The problem is, though, as you can already tell, if we're just doing antibody testing, we're going to miss a majority of those strains, all right? And so there's another lab called Galaxy Diagnostics out in North Carolina that was set up by a veterinarian that has done a lot of work looking at Bartonella. And what he's come up with is a way of measuring if the germs are in you by looking for their DNA. And the way that we look for DNA of germs is we do a technique called a PCR technique, which is a way of amplifying if we can see the DNA when we draw it from your blood, okay? Now keep in mind, it's hard to find these germs in the blood. They don't readily live in the blood, okay? But they've developed a technique at Galaxy of enhancing the amount of DNA that is in there. And so they have the ability with their enhanced PCR test for the Bartonella DNA of detecting all 15 strains of the Bartonella. Okay, so they can tell if stuff is there. The problem we don't know, because they haven't been able to do the testing, is what is their ability to pick up Bartonella when it is there? We don't know, because to do that, they would have to define a set of people known to have Bartonella, and it's hard to identify a set of people that are known to have Bartonella, okay? But if the test does come back positive, it is correct 100% of the time, and it gives you the ability to look for all 15 kinds of Bartonella. So that is the test I'm recommending. It's called an enhanced PCR or ePCR for Bartonella. There's a single blood draw test and a triple blood draw test. The best one is the triple blood draw test, okay? Keep in mind, though, even with that test, if it comes back negative, it doesn't exclude having Bartonella, because it could be that when they drew the blood from you, it just didn't happen to be swimming by the needle at the same time. And that's what I said. We don't know how effective this test is at picking up all Bartonella. That testing has not been done yet, okay? But that is the test I would do because it gives you the greatest chance of finding if Bartonella is there. All right. Thanks for that question, Bill. Let me see. I'm going to do a quick screen share here. All right. So if you want, I wrote a whole article about how to test and look for Bartonella. Let me find it here. So it'd be under how to diagnose. And take a look at this article about how to diagnose Bartonella in chronic Lyme disease. I talk about the why we sometimes need to rely on symptoms to help make that decision. And then I talk also about how to do the testing for it. Okay, so I talk about Galaxy Diagnostics here. All right. Now, one thing I should mention is often I don't even rely on the testing. And the reason is that because I know it's not perfect, I tend to look and see, are there enough symptoms that suggest Bartonella? And if there are enough symptoms, that is when I often decide to treat. Okay. So the symptoms that make us think of Bartonella, I have those symptoms written down here somewhere. Hold on. I'm trying to show you where it is. It's in this article. Here we are. It's in this section right here. Okay. So symptoms that make you think of Bartonella are day sweats, ongoing anxiety, pain on the soles of the feet, a rash that looks like stretch marks, a large number of swollen lymph nodes, bad thinking problems, seizures or seizure-like disorders, neurologic symptoms like numbness or sharp shooting, stabbing, or burning pains, a loss of nerve function in the body part, abdominal pain for which there's not an identifiable cause, and also sometimes people with Bartonella get a lot of bladder irritation, okay, where they have to pee frequently, or they might even have burning on urination. But if we do testing, we don't see it's a true bladder infection, okay? All right, so anyhow, that's all written down there for you. So what I'm saying is for Bartonella, sometimes we just make it as a clinical diagnosis because our testing is not perfect. But if you want to test, I think the best way to look would be to do this Galaxy Labs enhanced PCR doing a triple blood draw technique. Okay? All right. Thanks for that question. Hello, Stuver. Let's see. Happy New Year, Dr. Ross from the UK. You're welcome. I had to think for a minute what HNY stood for, but let's see. My question for you is, I was due to go to the dentist to get my amalgam fillings removed as I'm starting a 3-month course of disulfiram next week. I was all set to go until I was advised that removing these amalgam fillings could actually be more dangerous than leaving them in, as the mercury could get into my system when taking out, which could interact with the DSF. Do you think I made the correct decision, or should I have had the fillings removed and replaced with white ones? Are metals in the teeth as big as a deal as the Lyme specialists make them out to be? All right, so it looks like we may have questions about heavy metals tonight. Let me see here. So in terms of heavy metals, one source of mercury, heavy metals, could be the fillings in your teeth, okay? Now, all right, so it could be, all right. Now, what happens is as our fillings get older and we chew with our teeth, it causes a slight breakdown of those fillings, and you can literally get like a vapor cloud of mercury starts forming above our teeth if we have those silver amalgams in there. And so then we swallow that stuff in, and some of those heavy metals then get into our system, and they can lead to mitochondrial dysfunction, like I talked about earlier tonight, energy factory dysfunction in our cell and in each of our cells. Okay, so that's what the potential problem is. Now, just because you have them, does that mean it's causing you a problem? Not necessarily. And in fact, the only way to know if it is causing you a problem would be to do a heavy metal test, which is called a chelation, and what I prefer to do is to do something called a urine chelation test. All right, so let me talk about how you test for heavy metals. So there's three things you can do. You can do blood draw, you can do hair analysis where somebody cuts off a piece of your hair, or you can do something called a chelation challenge where we give you either an oral or IV chelating agent. Chelating agents are things that bind up heavy metals. And then we have you pee for 6 hours at a minimum or even up to 24 hours. And we see if you pee out excessive amounts of those heavy metals. If you do, then it tells us which ones are too elevated in you. Okay, now I prefer the urine test, and here's why. If we do a blood test, all that we're really able to see with that accurately is what you probably have been exposed to in the last 24 to 48 hours. And the reason is when we breathe in, drink in, eat in heavy metals, they generally get into our blood, and then they move to the kidneys, and we pee most of them out, okay? And that usually is within 24 to 48 hours, all right? A hair analysis will give you an idea of what your heavy metals excess is maybe over a 3-month period of time, okay? All right. But what we really want to know is what's going on inside your cells, like what's built up inside your cells. So what happens with heavy metals is when we, again, get them in us, we usually within about 24, 40 hours, most of it gets peed out, but some of it does remain. And those heavy metals get moved into our cells. And inside the cells, they're attracted to sulfur. And what is rich in sulfur is inside our cell energy factories called mitochondria. The enzymes that help drive a lot of the chemical reactions that give you energy are full of sulfur. And so what happens is these heavy metals go and bind to that sulfur because they're attracted to it, making your mitochondria not generate enough energy. Now, once they get in us like that and they're stored in us, they have what's called an elimination half-life, the time to get half of them out of about 22 to 23 years. Years, okay, all right? So that means this stuff just doesn't come out that quickly, all right? And so the urine test, the urine chelation challenge is a better way of getting an idea of what's inside those cells and stored up. Probably the next best way would be the hair analysis, but the blood testing just doesn't let you know really what's gotten stored up in your body. And that's what we're really interested in. Okay, now, do you necessarily need to remove these fillings? I would say only if you have elevated levels of mercury on a heavy metal challenge test. That would be about the only reason I think they should necessarily be removed, at least right away be removed. Okay, now, does mercury interact with disulfiram? I'm not aware that it does. I don't see a harm in actually getting your amalgams out and being on disulfiram at the same time, all right? The other part of the question, though, is what's the safest way to get those heavy metals out? So there are certain dentists that go by name biologic dentists that have offices set up in a way that when they're drilling out your mercury, that they basically suck out the mercury vapors so that you don't have a chance to swallow them down. That's the best way to get your mercury removed, your mercury fillings removed, is to go to a dentist that is set up to make sure that you're not going to breathe in those mercury vapors as they're drilling out those teeth, okay? All right, so that would be another part of the recommendation. But regardless of what you're doing, I don't think it's a reason not to proceed with your disulfiram. And I would also say, unless you have a known elevation of mercury in your system, I wouldn't even necessarily get them removed until you can prove they are a problem. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question. Good luck to you. Hello, Brenda. Let's see here. I have Lyme disease and my cortisol levels are low. My doctor wants to start me on Cortef, but I have always heard steroids should not be used if a person has Lyme disease. Have you used Cortef for your patients with Lyme? Are there herbs I can use instead to raise cortisol levels? Thank you. All right. So hold on here a minute, everyone. I'm having a little trouble with my lighting. It's making my lips look blue from my end. I want to see if I can do something here. There. That's less of a blue light. Anyhow, let's see here. Okay, so in terms of your adrenals and cortisol and Cortef, let's talk about that real quick. Okay, so your adrenal glands are a hormone system that sit on top of the kidneys, and one of the hormones they make is cortisol. So your adrenals naturally make cortisol on their own. And cortisol helps our body deal with stress. It helps the immune system deal with stress, okay? So we make what are called physiologic levels of cortisol. And so we want to make sure that a person is at least capable of making physiologic levels, all right? All right. So if somebody has low cortisol, sometimes we want to replace it. One of the ways that we can replace it is to give you cortisol directly, and that would be to use Cortef. And physiologic levels would be to give up to 30 milligrams twice a day of Cortef, okay? So there's a doctor named Dr. Jeffries that once wrote a publication about what would be considered to be normal. Most of us follow his recommendations, and it was up to 30 milligrams twice a day of Cortef would be considered to be physiologic, all right? So meaning if you take it up to that level, it actually helps your body do better, all right? But in the world of Lyme, you don't want to get much over the 30 milligrams twice a day because then that amount of cortisol could start suppressing the immune system, okay? So there's a level of cortisol that is healthy, and there's a level that becomes a problem when somebody has Lyme because cortisol can suppress the immune system in a way that allows the germs to get much more active, okay? So yes, I periodically will use it. I might even go up to 20. I have had one person I've had to go all the way up to 30 milligrams twice a day with using the Cortef. Okay, all right. Other ways that you can get higher levels of cortisol though would be to work herbally, and you can work with herbs that help the adrenals function better. My favorite is to use something called ashwagandha. It's an Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine herb, and the way to dose it is 400 to 500 milligrams. I usually will do 2 pills in the morning and 2 pills between 1 and 2 p.m. Okay, now there is a potential problem with it, and that is that ashwagandha is part of what is known as a nightshade family of plants. And nightshades can sometimes lead to inflammation. So other nightshades would be eggplants, tomatoes are nightshades, for instance, white potatoes are. Sweet potatoes are not. Sweet potatoes are a different animal altogether. They're actually okay to have, but white potatoes can be okay. And ashwagandha can be too. So I tell people if they start ashwagandha and suddenly they notice their inflammation gets worse, they may want to reconsider being on ashwagandha. The reason I still like it as my first support that I like using for people with adrenal issues is that it tends to be a kind of a calming way of supporting the adrenals. It's not energetically too hot. So when in the world of Chinese medicine, we recognize something called Yin and Yang. So you need Yin energy to hold Yang energy down, okay? So Yin is what kind of supports us on this earth. It kind of holds things together. Yang is boisterous kind of energy, all right? So consider things that we do to support your adrenals as being more Yang. And the problem is with most people in Lyme is they are so energetically depleted and so yin deficient that if we give them too strong of adrenal supports, it may make them really jittery and it would be hard to tolerate, okay? I don't find that to be an issue generally with ashwagandha, which is why I tend to use it. Other herbs that support the adrenals like ginseng, rhodiola, happen to be a little bit more energetically too hot. And they are ones I sometimes will use if I can't use ashwagandha, but I tend to steer more towards using ashwagandha first, even though I know it's a nightshade, okay? Because even though it's a nightshade that may lead to inflammation in some people, the majority of people, it does not. All right? All right. So good luck to you, and thank you for that question. Hello, Irina. Let's see. Happy 2020, Dr. Ross. Thank you. You too. Let's see. I have a question about mold. What is the best way to treat mold toxicity in Lyme patients? Should we just follow Neil Nathan protocol? What are herbal options for Cryptococcus infection? Do you think clove, thyme, and holy basil oils is beneficial? So I don't know what's the best way to treat Cryptococcus herbally. I'd have to look that up. I don't know that off the top of my head. Okay. In terms of mold toxicity, let's just talk briefly about what it is first, and then I'll talk to you about what's some of the better ways to treat for it. Okay. So mold, there are two problems that people can have with mold. Number one, if mold is living in your environment, many of us are allergic to mold and will develop allergic type symptoms. Okay, so that's one problem that can happen. Second problem that can happen is about 25% of people are genetically programmed in a way that when we breathe in mold toxins from our environment, that we are not able to get rid of them. All right. And just like Lyme can trigger cytokines, mold toxins can trigger cytokines, and so they can become quite a problem for people. All right. There's ways to find out if you happen to be a person that have built up mold toxins in you. My favorite way is actually to do urine testing for it. And there are two competing labs that offer different ways of testing to see if you have mold toxins in you. One is a Great Plains lab, and the other one is Real-Time lab. These days, because of cost, I'm tending to shift more towards doing the Great Plains lab because it's around a $300 lab. The Real-Time lab happens to be about a $795 test, I believe, for first time. However, be aware they use two totally different testing techniques, and there are some people that are advocating using both to see if you might have mold toxin illness, because sometimes one of the companies won't pick up the problem that you have and the other company's lab will. Okay. All right. So there is a test you can do to see if you have the genetic predisposition to not be able to remove these mold toxins. But that test is not 100% reliable, because I have seen people that have not had issues with a genetic predisposition that still have mold toxin illness. And I have also seen people that don't have a genetic predisposition. That do have a genetic predisposition. And I used to treat for mold toxin illness just based on that genetic predisposition and never got them better. Okay. So my favorite way of figuring out if you have it is the urine test, because if we do see it in your urine in excessive amounts, it means it's in you in excessive amounts and causing part of the problem. All right. Now, if you've determined that you do have mold toxin illness, the next thing we need to do is remove them. All right. So to understand why we remove them and how we remove them, I want to talk about what the problem is, like why we can't get rid of them. All right. So in 75% of people that don't have mold toxin illness, what happens is their immune system sees a mold toxin, tags it, and then other parts of the immune system come in and break it down. All right. But if you happen to have this genetic problem, your immune system is not capable of tagging those mold toxins, and therefore they don't get broken down. Things that are fat-based toxins in our body go to the liver, and the liver is the organ that is supposed to clean them out. But if the liver, in the case of mold toxins, the liver is not able to do it. So these mold toxins go to the liver fat-based, and they come out of the liver fat-based, and they go into our intestines. The liver moves them into our intestines. And out in the intestines, they basically get reabsorbed into our bloodstream, and they just go back into us. So you get this endless loop of toxins, okay? So if you have a problem, you figured it out with your urine test that you have a problem, then the next step you want to do is be able to remove them, okay? And the way you remove them is you have to take a binder, something that binds up the toxins in your intestines, all right? And how you determine what your binder is going to be is based on what are the toxins that are in you, okay? So for instance, the 4 of the toxins that might be in there, something is called trichosethine, which is black mold toxin. There's something called aflatoxin. There's something called ochratoxin, and there's something called gliotoxin, all right? What binders we use for gliotoxin may be different than the binders we use for aflatoxin, all right? So I like trying to get some idea of what a person has in them. If, however, you've decided not to do your urine testing, you just decide you're going to treat for mold toxins, you can kind of think of there are 2 what I would call general binders. One is a prescription called cholestyramine. The other general binder would be to use a pectin powder. Pectin is a fibrous substance that's found in apples and fruits, okay? But pectin can kind of serve as a general toxin binder, all right? But more specific binders, depending on what your toxin pattern is, would be to use activated charcoal, bentonite clay. Those are ones that can be used as well too, all right? So let me show you an article you can look at where I lay out I describe, depending on which toxin is elevated, which binder you should use and how to use them, okay? So let me show you here real quick. All right. And this table that I have in this article, or where I describe the options, is from Neil Nathan's work that you mentioned, okay? All right, so I have an article called Mold and Lyme Toxin Illness. And if you look down here, I talk about the various ways to test for it. And my favorite is to use the urine mold toxin test, okay? All right, and then, oops, looks like I need to update that to include both the Great Plains lab as well too. But anyhow, so I talk about general binders and specific binders, okay? And in the specific binders, for instance, ochratoxins are bound best by cholestyramine and activated charcoal. Aflatoxins are bound best by activated charcoal and bentonite clay. Trichosethines are bound best by activated charcoal, but cholestyramine, pectin, charcoal, and bentonite clay can help, okay? And gliotoxins are bound best by bentonite clay, okay? So that's why it's good to get the urine test done so you can figure out which one works best, okay? If you look down here, I talk to you about how to use these various binders and how to build them up. So without going into great detail here today, you'd have to come back and read this article, okay? All right. All right. So, Arena, I hope that gives you some answers there. And there you go. All right. Good luck to you. So one thing I would also say too, if I've got somebody that I have a strong sense they have mold toxin illness, I might just put them on cholestyramine or a pectin powder without doing specific testing, okay? And those would be people that give me a story like, I was doing very well, and then I moved into this one house that had black mold on the walls, and that's when I got sick, okay? That's mold toxin illness. I don't even need to go out and do a test on that one, okay? So just keep that in mind too, okay? All right. Good luck to you. Hold on here just a minute, everyone. Happy New Year, Dr. Ross. Let's see, your thoughts on Lyme and mood. My natural set point is cheerful, a Pollyanna sort. But after nearly 2 years of Lyme, started treatment 5 months ago, I'm struggling with a noticeably poor mood on a daily basis, and I have nothing else whatsoever to feel down about. I understand treatment takes time, but sometimes I wonder if this mood challenge isn't because of gut and brain chemistry problems related to Lyme. My Lyme is, I believe, primarily brain related. I've tested twice for co-infections, both coming back negative, though I know you don't rely on tests alone. I've thought of BART, but not sure any other symptoms for that. Anyway, your thoughts on mood and Lyme. Thank you ever so much for all you do. Yeah, you're welcome. So one thing that can happen in Lyme, yes, Lyme itself can give mood problems. The Lyme infection is known to give mood problems. Bartonella can sometimes give mood problems too. But this happened after you started treating. So what I wonder is if by killing germs, you've triggered even more cytokines. And we know cytokine excess leads to mood disorders too. In fact, there's a psychiatrist that is an active member in ILADS, a guy named Bransfield out in New Jersey, that has articles where he describes that cytokines lead to depression, And depression then leads to cytokines, believe it or not. So your mood disorders start triggering more cytokines, and it becomes this endless loop, okay? So when I hear a story like this where somebody didn't really get more moody until we started beginning treatment, what I start wondering is if, as we've been killing germs, did we trigger more of an excess cytokine state that then is leading to more of the mood disorder, okay? And so in situations like this, what I have done is I work aggressively to lower the cytokines, and I see, will the mood disorder get better? And the two things I'd suggest doing, number one, get on curcumin. Curcumin is a component of turmeric, the Indian seasoning turmeric. And curcumin gets inside the white blood cells and limits the cytokine production line. Okay, so it blocks the ability to make those cytokines, all right? And then the second thing I would do is get on some glutathione. Glutathione is a very strong antioxidant that's made in every one of our cells. It fixes damage, okay? But it supports liver detox, and it's used for detoxification too. But the reason I would use it here is as a strong antioxidant, it decreases triggers that are causing your white blood cells to make cytokines. And you could take orally, I like using something called liposomal glutathione. Liposomal glutathione means that the glutathione is microscopically wrapped in fat. And when you microscopically wrap glutathione in fat, it increases its absorption, okay? And in fact, the product I like using is by Research Nutritionals, a product called Fortify. They've done studies on their Fortify product that shows marked increased levels inside your red blood cells of glutathione when you take their liposomal product, all right? If you don't use a liposomal product, it's just not that well absorbed, to be honest with you, okay? But anyhow, if you were to do the glutathione, I would do a teaspoon of the Fortify product twice a day would be a good way to see if it is cytokines that are bothering you, okay? All right? So those are some thoughts for you. Good luck to you, Molly. Let me just show you real quick, because I mentioned that once here. I'm going to just show you where this product is too. All right. So this is my supplement store, Marty Ross MD Supplements. Any supplements I recommend tonight, if I talk in generic terms, you could come here and do a search for that supplement and see exactly which brand do I recommend. Because that's the problem in the world of supplements, is there's a lot of people making supplements these days and companies. But to be honest with you, a lot of this stuff, according to studies, a lot of what is going on out there basically is garbage is going in these products. In fact, there's been studies showing that many brands don't even have what they say is on the label in their product, all right? So I've tried to source products here and brands here on my supplement store that I have found helpful in my practice. And also that I know by working with the manufacturers, I work with companies that have a good track record of putting in their products what they're supposed to put in their products, basically, okay? All right, so this Fortify that I was talking about is a product that is made by Research Nutritionals. Oops, looks like I didn't get that correct. Let's try this. There we are. So they have two varieties. There's something called Fortify Orange. This is it here. They also have another one called Fortify Watermelon. This basically, they put flavoring in to cover sulfur that is in both of these products. Okay, all right. Go back here. So regarding my supplement store, if you're looking for what I recommend and what I use with my patients, you can go there to look. Also, that supplement store is available for anyone to order from. We have our shipping center for it down in Austin, Texas, because I can get to the East Coast and the West Coast pretty quickly from there. It's one of those things I did not bring back to Seattle when I reopened my practice. I left my supplement store down there, so that's where it ships from too. Okay? All right. Thanks for your question. Hello, Melissa. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I'm a chiropractor in the very beginning stages of treating Lyme patients. I was reading that ashwagandha can interfere with thyroid medication. Have you experienced this? Any recommendations for an alternative adaptogen? That's interesting, because if you look at, so first of all, welcome to the world of treating Lyme disease. It's a complicated illness, as you know. So my hat's off to you on that one. In terms of ashwagandha, if you look at the studies I've looked at on it are basically animal studies. We don't have any good human studies, but in animal studies, there's animal studies that document improved adrenal and thyroid function. So in fact, when I've got somebody that I'm having difficulty with their thyroid, I'm also sometimes will use ashwagandha as a way that I will treat for hypothyroidism. So I'm not sure. I'd be interested to see what you're reading that says it may interfere with thyroid medication, because that has not been, number one, I find it to help the thyroid. Secondly, I have not seen in literature that says it actually interferes with thyroid medication, but I'm open to seeing whatever you got on that. If you happen to have that article, I'd appreciate it if you could send it to me. My email is docmarty, it's DOCMARTY at martyrossmd.com. Okay, I appreciate seeing what you have on that, because I'm not aware of that actually. In terms of alternative adaptogens, I kind of mentioned them earlier. Rhodiola, Siberian ginseng, Panax ginseng can do it too. Another one would be cordyceps. The mushroom cordyceps is another way to do it too. Generally, again, I tended to avoid those because those adaptogens I find to be just energetically a bit too hot for my Lyme patients. My Lyme patients don't have enough yin energy to hold on to all that yang energy in these adrenal supports. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question. Good luck to you, and welcome to Treating Lyme. Excuse me, everyone. Swallowed something down the wrong hatch there. I apologize for that. All right, let's see here. Hello, Elise. Hi, Dr. Russ. I'm wondering if you feel methylene blue is able to be used against Bartonella. Have you seen results from other patients using against Lyme or Bart and known side effects? Thanks for all you do. You know, the idea of using methylene blue, I believe, is coming to us from more recent research on Petri dishes that has been done by Dr. Yingzhang out of Hopkins lab. I haven't actually been using it with my patients yet, so I can't report back on what my experience is using this. I know some of my colleagues are starting to use it, but I don't think we have yet a consensus among those of us that are using it or have been using it as to whether it's effective or not. Okay. Keep in mind what we see that works on a Petri dish, like these experiments that Dr. Zhang has done. What happens on a Petri dish does not necessarily mean it's going to work in a human. In fact, a majority of things that we see that happen on Petri dishes that suggest something might work don't work in a human. All right. But the idea to use this thing called methylene blue against Bartonella comes from research by Yingzhang on a Petri dish showing that it can treat Bartonella. I think it's still, jury is really out as to whether it's an effective inhuman way of treating for Bartonella. Okay. And the only side effects I would know about it is it may cause some killing of the germs and some Herx reactions, but beyond that, I'm not aware of any. All right. Thanks for that question. CJ, let's see. Be blessed in the new year, Dr. Ross. Thank you. Let's see. Do you have some favorite websites that you go to for the latest research on Lyme and co-infections? You know, I really don't. I usually come across things in my own perusal, but I don't have any one website that I go to. I pick things up at conferences and then I go read the articles. But in terms of one website to go to, I'm not familiar. I don't know which one I would recommend for you on that. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Alexandra. Let's see. Good evening, Dr. Ross. I got Lyme 2 years ago and went from 220 pounds to 180. I've always been very healthy and muscular, but Lyme and or keto diet made me lose too much weight. How bad are carbs while on antibiotics? I was considering quitting keto diet, but I'm afraid of candida. Thank you very much. So, you know, first of all, let me just say there's no one, although I recommend a paleo type diet and a keto type diet for patients with Lyme, It doesn't work in everyone. There's some people that have got to go back on carbs. I found that out with a number of patients in my practice, especially athletes. I have found that there just is not enough that some people, and for as athletes especially, need to have some degree of carbs, okay? So not all carbs are created equal, all right? And not all sugar is created equal. So when it comes to yeast, the main thing you don't want to do is put simple sugars in. So you don't want to do fruit juices because that's simple sugar, okay? And you don't want to do sugar, dumping all kinds of sugar and baked goods into it, okay? But you can still do your complex carbs, and that would be the kind of carbs that you find in fruits or in vegetables. Probably stay away from the fruits. And you can find complex carbs in your beans and legumes because there's a lot of fiber in those products as well too, okay? Other sources of fruits that would have complex carbs in them would be like papaya. You could do mango and oh boy, I'm blanking. Not bananas, but looks like a banana. I'm blanking. The fruit that looks just like a banana you get out of South America. It'll come to me eventually. But those, papaya, that fruit that looks like a banana, and mango all have very complex fiber structures that limit the amount of free carbs that are going to necessarily trigger yeast in your intestines as well too. Okay? All right. So good luck to you, and thanks for that question. Hello, Irene LC. Happy 2020. Oh, we already answered that one. Hello, Stacy. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks so much for hosting this. You're welcome. I see my question. Can you take grapefruit seed extract with any antibiotic for Lyme? My doctor prescribed a rotation of doxy, then Ceftin, then Linea, but I'd like to take grapefruit seed extra too per your recommendations. You can take it with anything. So grapefruit seed extract, everyone, is an herb that is useful for treating the cyst form of Lyme. The doxy and Ceftin the doxy and Ceftin that your doc wants to prescribe probably or do not do anything for the cyst form of Lyme. The Alinea, I know a number of my colleagues are using Alinea to treat Lyme. We really don't have any proof it works. I'll be honest with you, okay? And therefore, it's hard to say what form of the germ it actually treats. Alinea was designed to treat parasites. It's also known to be effective, and the way that it works is it works on germs that are called anaerobic germs. The mechanism is a mechanism found in anaerobic germs, meaning germs that don't grow well on oxygen or don't need oxygen. Lyme happens to be one of those. So therefore, many of my colleagues have been starting to use Alinea. I've tried it before. I just don't find that impressive results from it, okay? So the grapefruit seed extract, everyone, is a way of treating the cyst form of the Lyme germ. The other way that Lyme lives in a person is it lives as a spirochete. That's a corkscrew-looking thing, okay? And Lyme also lives inside of cells and outside of cells, and we need to treat for all four of those, all right? Spirochete, cyst, and living inside and outside. I like to treat for all forms and inside outside at the same time, which means I like to combine grapefruit seed extract with other antibiotics. And I do combine it with doxy. I do combine it with Ceftin. I've never combined it with Alinea, but I don't see any harm in doing that. If you're going to use it as your Lyme cyst buster, you want to take it as 250 milligrams, and you want to take it as one pill 2 times a day. Okay? All right. Very good. Thanks for the question. Hello, Liz. Hi, and Happy New Year, Dr. Ross. One question. What causes these mad random pains? 1 week, my feet hurt. 1 week, my ass is so sore, I can't sit down. 1 week, my wrist hurt, etc. What is the Lyme and co-infection doing that causes this? Thanks for all you do. It's a crazy symptom. In fact, many of you are familiar with Dr. Richard Horowitz, who's based out of New York, that has published some books about Lyme and is doing some research about novel treatments for Lyme disease too. But Horowitz developed his Lyme disease questionnaire. It's called the MSIDS questionnaire. If you just put MSIDS and then questionnaire or Horowitz Lyme questionnaire, you'll find his questionnaire, okay? And he's done some research now to show which symptoms on his questionnaire are very valid for indicating Lyme because they're not really found in other conditions. And the two that he has found that if they're present are valid for indicating Lyme, it can be just as valid as doing blood testing, for instance, is wandering nerve pain or wandering muscle and joint pain. Okay, wandering, meaning it's here one time, it's there the next time. That's what you're describing here. Now, why this? What I'm trying to say is, yes, it is a phenomenon that is very unique for Lyme. All right, why it happens, we don't know. Obviously, as inflammation gets worse in one area versus another area another time, but as to why the body is behaving that way or the immune system is behaving that way, I don't know. I don't think any of us know that. Okay, all right. Good luck to you, and thanks for raising that question. All right, let's see here. So first of all, I remembered the name of the yellow banana-like fruit. They're plantains. It finally just came to me here. Let's see here. Sam, you've written me well, it might fit. Sam, I'm going to try to post your question. We'll see if this works. Sometimes they're too long to work, okay, but we'll see here. Yeah, I think that'll work. Okay. Hello, see, this is from Sam. Hello, Dr. Marty Ross. Firstly, I would like to thank you for the help and advice that you give and for your great website. You're welcome. Thank you. It's really helped. I'm from the UK and currently under an LLMD in London and would appreciate your thoughts on the treatment I've had having. I was diagnosed through Armin Labs in April last year with Lyme, Bartonella, and possible Babesia. My doctor started me on Doxy, cotrimoxazole, cefuroxime, grapefruit seed extract, and artesunate. All right, so I just want to break that down for a minute. So the cotrimoxazole, everyone, is a drug we call here in North America. It's called Bactrim, or it's also known as trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole. Okay, so I just wanted to point that one out. In Europe, they would call it the cotrimoxazole. All right. All right, and so Doxy, cotrimoxazole, cefuroxime, grapefruit seed extract, all of those are targeting Lyme, and the addition of the cotrimoxazole in there makes it so that it might be effective against a persister group of Lymes as well too, okay? All right, then the cotrimoxazole coupled with doxycycline is a treatment that could be effective against Bartonella that your testing says you might have. And then finally, artesunate, everyone, is an extract from Chinese wormwood, which is also where artemisinin comes from. And I know many of you know I talk about using artemisinin to treat Babesia and parasites. And so your artesunate in here is an agent that could be used to treat Babesia because we use antimalarials to treat it. All right? Okay. So after 4 months, my doctor then switched the antibiotics to amoxicillin, doxy, and tinidazole for further 4 months. I had clarithromycin added to this regimen for a month, but had to stop it as it started to affect my heart. I also had my vitamin B12 tested and it came back at a level of 50. So my doctor has put me on every other day hydroxychloroquine injections and 5 milligram folic acid. After 8 months of antibiotics, my fatigue, air hunger, tingling, and headaches have gone and anxiety calmed down a little, but I'm still left with muscle twitching in my calf and foot arch. I had since 2014 possible nerve damage, according to my doctor. Eye floaters, minor dizziness, and anxiety. My LLMD sent a urine test to real time in the labs, and it came back highly positive for ochratoxin A, gliotoxin, and mycocephalic acid. I'm now on cholestyramine, zeolite, liposomal glutathione, and amphotericin and B nasal rinse for 2 months, as well as Buhner and Cowden herbs. My doctor thinks this is the last piece of the puzzle. What are your thoughts? So let me go back. Okay, so what I'm wondering is if you didn't get an adequate Bartonella treatment. All right, so let me talk about that. And yes, I do think removing the mold toxins could be helpful here, but I don't think it's mold toxins that are giving you muscle twitching and the anxiety that you're still having, okay? So when we treat Babesia, generally 4 to 5 months is enough time. So the artesuate that you did for 4 months probably is an adequate amount of time to have taken care of Babesia, and that's why things like your air hunger is gone, for instance, okay? All right. When you switched the antibiotics to the amoxicillin, doxycycline, tinidazole regimen, that regimen is exclusively a Lyme germ regimen. It does nothing for Bartonella, and it does nothing for Babesia. When it comes to Bartonella, many of us find it takes 4 to 6 months of continuous treatment to get rid of it. And so I'm questioning if you had an adequate length of Bartonella treatment. And in fact, I would probably try to treat until your anxiety is gone as a sign that the Bartonella is out, okay? So symptoms that can suggest active Bartonella are anxiety. Let me go back here. I got to see what you're reporting here. So dizziness, which is a neurologic symptom, could be Bartonella, can be Lyme. Anxiety often is more Bartonella than it is Lyme, and that's what has me thinking about Bartonella for you. Muscle twitches tends to be something that can be due to Bartonella. I will also tell you sometimes it just becomes a permanent injury that continues on even after you get Bartonella and Lyme out. But for what you've described here, in addition to going after your toxin issue, I would consider still treating for Bartonella. Depending on what you're using out of Buhner and Cowden, if you are on a combination of continuous Sitta acuta and Hutania, those are the 2 herbs that I like to work to treat Bartonella. And I can show you an article about how I like using those to make sure you get a Bartonella treatment in. And I would treat for continuously for probably 6 months, whether you use Hutania, Sitta acuta, or whether you wind up using prescription antibiotics. I would wind up treating for 6 months continuously to make sure you wipe out that Bartonella, okay? All right, let me do a quick screen share here for you, Sam. Let's see here. All right, so... All right, so what was I going to show you here? I came over here to show you something. Oh, yeah, my Bartonella treatment. So take a look under the infection treatment plan section here. And here's my article called Kills Bartonella, a Brief Guide. In terms of the herbs, I include those under what I call a tier 3 treatment. And that's the Hutania and the Sitta acuta, okay? All right, and I talk here about how to dose them as well too, okay? All right, so good luck to you. Hello, Delfino. Let's see. I was diagnosed with Lyme 3 years ago and have been treating it since then. I don't recall having a tick bite or the bullseye rash. According to my naturopath, the symptoms match the Lyme with Babesia and Bartonella symptoms. I've been on clarithromycin and nystatin for the last year. My fatigue is terrible and I have lots of brain fog, sore throat, vision problems and eye pain, mouth lesions, terrible upper back and neck pain, tender temples, ear ringing at times. Something interesting, I had green boogers ever since I got sick. What are your thoughts on my case? Any recommendations? Lastly, I live in Bend, Oregon, and planning a trip to see you. Thank you. Delphine, I'd be glad to help you if you do get up here. So, I can't. I see you have a lot of symptoms. Thank you for writing those all down. I would need to meet with you and even ask you more questions so I could figure out clinically what is present. But what I will tell you is if for the last year you've only been on nystatin and clarithromycin, you are not being adequately treated for Lyme. And if you've got Babesia and Bartonella, clarithromycin by itself would not be enough to get rid of Babesia and Bartonella. All right. Usually it's 2 antibiotic regimens that are going to work best for both of those. In terms of Lyme, you've got to treat for Lyme living inside cells and outside of cells. And you have to treat for the spirochete form. That's the corkscrew looking thing. And you got to treat for another form, which is called a microscopic cyst form. The clarithromycin will treat Lyme in and out of cells, and it will treat spirochete Lyme, but it doesn't do anything to treat the cyst form of Lyme. One of the ways you can do that is to add grapefruit seed extract as a 250 milligram pill twice a day. But I can't tell from what you're describing here whether I would call this Babesia or Bartonella 2. But if they're present, I want to let you know I don't see that you're on effective treatments for either one of those. Okay. And if you do come up here, I'd be glad to help you look at that. Okay. Good luck to you. All right. Let's see here. Hello, Patricia. Hold on here just a minute. Let's see. Happy New Year, Dr. Ross. Brief history. Lyme 2015, Bell's palsy 2016, Lyme 2017. Treated for heavy metals and mold, although much improved, remaining persist. Sleepwalking at night, feeling hot with tingling sensation, torso, and sometimes arms and legs, unable to get back to sleep. Constant and fluctuating tinnitus, twitching and floaters in the eyes, flushing, cold hands and feet, and extreme weight loss, unable to gain back. I am trying to work with a naturopath who is not LLMD. Previous doctor had diagnosed dysbiosis and malabsorption. Are all the supplements I am taking absorbed in this situation? In your opinion, would malabsorption also indicate leaky gut? Might it be wise to treat for parasites as well to cover all the bases? I have listened to your video regarding leaky gut and understand that steps needed, but current doctors not feel this is the issue. Gluten-free, dairy-free diet, taking good probiotics, Zymogen, Biomax, digestive enzymes. I just started Thorn Meriva, plan to add glutathione. One last question. Do you have any experience with Stefania for Bell's palsy? Thank you and best wishes in your new practice. You rock, Dr. Ross. Thank you. So Patricia, bear with me here. I need to go back and look at part of this here just a second. All right, so here's what I can't tell from I may not be able to answer this, even though you gave me a lot of information. So I do see that you were treated for heavy metals and mold, and you say that you had Lyme in 2015 and Bell's palsy in 2016 and Lyme in 2017. What you haven't told me is if you took any antibiotics or herbal or prescription to get rid of those and what you used. In other words, I can't tell with what's going on here. Do you still have active Lyme because of, or co-infections like Bartonella possibly, especially with Bell's palsy and Lyme, quote unquote. Bartonella often is involved in a lot of that neurologic symptoms. So I can't tell from what you're telling me here what's going on, whether this is still active Lyme or active Bartonella that was not adequately treated, okay? Because just doing heavy metals and mold is not going to make it so your immune system miraculously turns on and takes care of those infections. I haven't seen that happen before, okay? In terms of malabsorption, it is possible you could have poor absorption of the nutrients you're trying to put in, but I would need more information to know that you're having, I guess what I would call food parts remaining in your stool. Sometimes you can actually see those indicating malabsorption, and sometimes you can only see those on a microscopic exam of your stool. So what I'm going to suggest here is, so that I can give you the best answer, I need to ask you a lot of questions. So you might want to consider either coming to see me directly, I don't even know where you live, or you could book online one of my telemedicine visits where I meet with you in my telemedicine clinic, which is a video platform where I see you and you see me, and I get to ask you a bunch of questions and come up with some treatment ideas for you and diagnosis ideas too. Okay, I'll show you where you can look at information on that here in just a second. All right, so This is my practice website. This is Marty Ross MD Healing Arts. And take a look at my appointments page. And I talk about two types of visits I offer. I offer what's called a full medical service or a limited consult service, okay? To read about those two options, you can read. I give a lot of detail down here about them. But the big difference is this limited consult service is something that you can book, that you don't come to see me. The only limitation is I can't prescribe or order tests for you directly. If you need to have those done, we'll need to see if you can get your physician to do those. But I can give you diagnosis ideas, and I can talk with you about supplements and herbs that you can use to treat things. And I can talk about prescriptions. I just can't prescribe them, okay? And if you are interested in doing it, you would click this Book Now button, and you could book the appointment, all right? I urge everyone to read through everything about the differences between these visits. And down here in this section, I talk about cost and why I don't take insurance, okay? So you can take a look down there, basically. And both the visits, there are forms you need to fill out. I have them circling them right here. So you would click on those, and you need to get those forms back to me then too, okay? All right. All right. Thanks for that question, and good luck to you, Patricia. Hello, Patricia. Hello again, Dr. Ross. Do you have any experience with Stefania for residual Bell's palsy? I don't actually, and that was part of your question. I'm sorry, I forgot to answer that. But no, I don't. I don't have any experience. The things I find most helpful for Bell's palsy, and one that has a lot of science supporting it too, is to do acupuncture. Actually, I find that to be very helpful. But I have not tried Stefania, so I can't report back on that. But thank you for that question, but also for the idea. I'll have to look into it. Let's see. Hello, Dale. Let's see. Happy New Year 2020. Thank you. And Happy New Year to you too. Hello, Diane. Can Lyme co-infections play a role in developing epilepsy? Thank you. The answer is yes. The two infections that we think can be involved in epilepsy or seizures is what I'll call it, is Bartonella is a big culprit, and also Lyme can be too. Now, keep in mind that the type of seizures that sometimes that we see that are very visible to me when I see patients sometimes don't show up when the neurologists start doing their electrical recording of your brain waves to see if they can diagnose the kind of seizures you're having. Okay, so you go to a neurologist to document what kind of seizures you're having. They hook a bunch of wires up to your head, and then they measure electrical activity, and especially while you're having a seizure, and they try to see if that corresponds. The thing is for some reason, the type of seizures that you get with Bartonella and Lyme do not show up with recognizable patterns on the EEG. And some might even call them pseudo seizures. I think they're real. Personally, I've seen enough people get a lot better by treating their Lyme and or Bartonella to think that they are real, even though we don't see those EEG manifestations of them. Okay? All right. Thanks for the question. Good luck to you. Hello, Natasha. Hey, doc. If you have Bartonella and you get pregnant, can transmission be prevented if you are on antibiotics for Lyme transmission? So it depends on which antibiotic you're on. So we think Lyme can be transmitted during pregnancy, everyone. And that's based on some data kept on women that were pregnant out of the East Coast in the late 80s, early 90s. And in this, there wasn't a formal research study, but one of the Lyme disease associations out there asked women if they would provide information about what happened to their baby what happened to them and their baby during pregnancy and afterwards. Okay. And what we know from that data that was collected there is that 50% of women that had Lyme during pregnancy who did not take antibiotics, there would be transmission to the the baby, all right? But if they were on antibiotics, that transmission rate went down to 0%, okay? There are no similar studies that have been done for Bartonella, but we think that Bartonella can be transmitted during pregnancy as well, just knowing how the germ is. But we have no studies or no data that proves that. I just want to let you know, okay? Now, one of the antibiotics that we can use to prevent transmission of Lyme during pregnancy is azithromycin, also called Zithromax. It's an intracellular antibiotic. And conceivably, it could potentially prevent Bartonella transmission. But again, we've never done studies to prove that, okay? But Zithromax by itself may be enough to prevent Bartonella transmission during pregnancy because it's an intracellular antibiotic, and it is intracellular antibiotics that can treat Bartonella. So it's possible, okay? All right. Thank you for that question, Natasha. See here. I've got some, bear with me, everyone. I've got some people posted their questions twice, so I'm just trying to clean those out before I can get to the next ones. Here we are. Hello, Nina. Good to see you here tonight. Let's see. Happy New Year, Marty. Do you know if CBDA oils are helpful for reducing inflammation due to neurolyme? What has your experience been or that of your Lyme patients? So I've used CBD oil. I haven't used specific CBDA oil. What I can tell you, the data would suggest, and it's limited research that we have, unfortunately, is that that CBD is probably better as an anti-inflammatory than what another marijuana product would be or cannabis product would be, which is THC. These are chemicals that are found in cannabis and in marijuana, okay, THC and CBD. So, but of those, CBD is probably a better immune inflammation modulator than THC, and that's based upon the mechanisms by which they work. I have not seen specific information about CBDA though, okay? All right. There's a lot of initials. It's kind of confusing, but anyhow, I hope that answered your question. I guess what I'm saying is CBDA is a variety of CBD, and therefore it probably would help inflammation, okay? Hello, Eddie. Let's see. I have a persistent headache that never goes away. I have different treatments ranging from Mepron, Malarone, the Dapsone, Depline protocol, and have had to do IV antibiotics at least every 8 to 10 days just to get headache down. I've started treating my yeast levels with 2 meds, nystatin, fluconazole, and am also treating trying alcohol cessation drug at the moment. I feel hopeless, like this headache will never go away. I have had several negative MRI lumbar puncture for any causes of this headache that never leaves. Sorry if this sounds confusing. The clinic I attend is a great Lyme clinic called Pacific Frontier Medical. I just would like to hear your thoughts or any advice. Basically, what you've written here looks to me like they've tried a number of things for you that could have helped. I have had one patient in my practice that I ran through a number of things to treat Lyme and co-infections, and we were not able to get the headache to go away. I hope that's not your situation, but I will let you know. I don't know what else I would add here. And to be honest with you, the only way I could really figure out what I could add would be to ask you a lot of questions because I need more detail. But it looks like they've tried a wide range of things that could be very helpful in terms of killing germs that can trigger headaches. And so your headaches still persist. I don't know what else I would be able to add to that. The other thing you might want to try, if you haven't done so already, sometimes in these situations I have found acupuncture helpful for my patients. I have sometimes found a type of alternative treatment called craniosacral therapy, which is doing light massage to your head bones trying to get changes in movements of spinal fluid moving through your brain. That can sometimes be helpful too. It's called craniosacral therapy. It's often done by osteopathic physicians or massage therapists that have been trained to do that type of therapy. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Dale. I appreciate your advice. Recently, my thyroid does not regulate. Could you recommend a lab that specializes in hormones? You know, I don't think you need to do a specific lab that specializes in hormones. Even the regular labs can do good thyroid testing. Is that you want to make sure you get the right thyroid test, okay? So what you would want to get is something called thyroid stimulating hormone, also called TSH. You would want to get something called a free T4. You would want to get something called free T3. You want to get thyroid antibodies. And you also want to get something called a reverse T3. All right. And with that picture that is done, if you have a doctor that knows how to interpret them, you get a good snapshot of what's happening with your thyroid. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Let's see. Hi, Stacy. Hi, Dr. Ross. Another question for you here. Excuse me, everyone. Let's see. I've started taking the full Cowden protocol. Have you found that taking just the Otoba and cat's claw is sufficient for the high success rate you found with these herbs, or do you recommend the full protocol? I'm still debating whether to take more antibiotics alongside the herbal protocol. I took 1 3-week course of doxy and experienced a worsening of symptoms after finishing. On the fence between just the herbs or antibiotics and herbs. Thank you again. All right. So generally, the 2 parts of Cowden that I like are the Otoba and cat's claw. I have not been a big friend or believer that the other germ-killing properties that he thinks works in these other antimicrobials that he uses are that effective. I don't like rotating the Otoba and cat's claw the way he does, where he does 2 months on, 2 months off. I find the most success actually using it continuously. There are pieces that are missing in the Cowden protocol, which is why I don't think it's that useful of a protocol. And those pieces are, he doesn't really do anything to address sleep, although more recently he has. But you also need to be doing things to support your adrenals. You need to lower cytokines, and he does nothing to lower cytokines at all. The other thing that Cowden misses is his protocol doesn't do anything effective for Babesia. And finally, I don't agree with the way that he does detox. I do not think the Panella and Berber are worth it. I don't think there's great benefit in using those. And generally, I think there's better benefit in using things like a glutathione. I think you would do better taking a look at my full Ross Lyme support protocol and picking the things that you need there to correct sleep, support your adrenals, get yeast under control, support your thyroid glands, be on a good multivitamin, be on some glutathione to help with detox, and then work with the Otoba and cat's claw to treat Lyme. I think you're going to find it to be a more effective protocol than using the Cowden protocol. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Al. Let's see. Happy New Year, Dr. Ross. I'd like to hear your opinion on using Biofilm Busters. Thank you. So, biofilms, everyone, I'll be glad to answer that for you, Alan. So biofilms, everyone, are a layer of slime that can cover Lyme germs. Even Bartonella, we now know, has biofilms as well, too. And this biofilm is a layer of slime in which Lyme can hide, basically. But in these biofilm communities, also, there's a whole other group of bacteria that live, that set up a whole community, and they take on various functions. They're pretty elaborate complexes. Holding this biofilm sugar slime layer together is a bunch of proteins that they have a protein, or a skeleton, if you will, made up of blood clotting proteins called fibrin. Okay. All right. And so anyhow, there if we look at studies about prescription antibiotics, any of them to some degree break down probiotics. If we look at research that was done by a researcher out of New Haven, Connecticut called Eva Chapi, S-A-P-I, she's running one of the more novel Lyme disease research clinics or labs out on the East Coast. Her research from about 6-7 years ago shows that tinidazole, metronidazole, doxycycline, I believe amoxicillin, all of these prescriptions do break down biofilms to a degree, some better than others. In fact, of the prescription antibiotics, tinidazole works best. I think in her experiments broke down about 85% of biofilm. In that same set of experiments, she also looked at the two herbs called otobobark and cat's claw that I was just talking about in the last example. And her experiment showed those two herbs used together break down 100% of the biofilm, okay? The point I'm trying to make by saying this is that sometimes you don't need to be on a specific biofilm buster because your antibiotics may be doing good enough busting them up themselves, all right? I will often think of adding biofilm busters in if I'm about 4 to 6 months into a treatment and I'm just not getting anywhere with somebody. Then I might start thinking of doing targeted biofilm busters. And the one I like using, one is lumbrikinase, which is an enzyme made by earthworms that actually breaks down the protein structure that holds biofilms together. More recently, the other one I like using is something called biocidin. Biocidin has a number of herbs in it that basically work through a lot of different mechanisms to keep to break down biofilms. And then finally, there is another product by Research Nutritionals. Oh boy, I'm going to blank on their product. I'll go look at it here in a minute. That also has a number of herbs in it that work through multiple mechanisms to break down biofilms too. So if your antibiotics themselves are not doing an adequate job, if you're not getting better, then it's time to add in some type of an herbal support to do that, okay? Let me show you an article where you can look at how to do this. All right, so I have a whole article on biofilm treatments. And it's this one called the Biofilms Lyme Disease Gated Communities, okay? Okay, so if you read through this section here, I talk about the various things that I would use, including the biocidin, otoba, and cat's claw you can use to actually do it. And then the product that I like from Research Nutritionals is called BioDisrupt, okay? So anyhow, take a look at this article for some more ideas for you, okay? All right. Thanks for that question, Alan. All right. So listen, everyone, that's it for me for tonight. It's been about an hour and a half I've been spending here with you. It's been good being here, and I will be back here again the next 3 Thursdays. So I hope you'll sign up and join me again. I apologize. I was having a hard time in this new office getting my lighting systems to work. You saw me fighting with it tonight, and I've been fighting with it the last 2 weeks. I've got to get a different lighting set up so that this works better for me and for you as well too. So I'll be looking into how to do that over the next week. Keep your eyes out in your email tomorrow morning. There will be an email that will come from me with a link to sign up for next week's webinar, but also it will include the link to the recording. Okay. All right. And that should be to you somewhere before 9 to 9:30 a.m. in the morning. Good night, everyone. Good being here with you, and good luck with your recovery from Lyme. Bye-bye.